Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bet Hucks. I am a PhD candidate at Heidelberg University, and today I will be discussing digital publication issues and solutions. This talk was originally given as part of a brainstorming session for the ASOR group Digging Up Data in May of 2025. To begin, I'm going to give you a quick overview of some types of creators' rights that many may not have considered when thinking about public scholarship. These rights are called VERA rights in the US. They're also known as moral rights. And it's been US law since 1990, but a number of other countries, especially in Western Europe, have similar laws, Australia as well. They are not the same as copyright or trademark, and regular enforcement of them is not required to maintain the right. They are lifetime rights. They can't be sold or transferred, but they can be passed to the estate after you pass on. And when you are talking to publishers about publications, you should be specific about what kinds of rights you maintain and read every detail of your contract. If you need to get assistance or use your university's law department to look at contracts, that's always a good idea. But Vera rights mean that you, as an artist, always maintain the right of attribution. So all your work should be attributed to you at all times when you want them to. And it also includes the right of integrity. So if you feel that your work is being used in a way that is derogatory toward you or toward your public image, you may have some ways of dealing with that by calling into play your VERA rights. Um, it guarantees that usage permissions can be rescinded in those cases, even with a lifetime usage contract. So, what qualifies? Certain types of writing, podcasts, tape interviews, digital creations, things along those lines, more traditional arts for sure. Databases are still iffy or unsettled case law. Now we'll move on to some practical considerations, many of which do not have clear solutions yet, legal or otherwise. So we'll start with composite and 3D materials and AI. Lots of questions, not so many answers. Who owns what part of the work? When you take thousands of photographs or use other people's photographs to create 3D models, do you need to cite file names individually? Do you need to cite each photographer or creator individually? The answer would generally be yes, but how do you do that if it's thousands of images? Do they each need to be cited as a whole or in part? And what if you use software that incorporates AI and isn't a closed system? Then that information gets uploaded to the cloud and integrated with thousands or millions of other images. And are you okay with your project being part of a generative AI? More than that, is your publisher okay with that? Is your university or your institution consider that a breach of contract? So those are all things that we should be thinking about, especially in regards to your colleagues. This needs to be mutually agreed upon by all parties involved. International and online copyrights. Will your publisher permit translations or audiobooks? If so, will the digital editions be location linked and blocked, including selling on different marketplaces like Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.de, etc.? Does your publisher have international branches and lawyers to deal with issues of international copyright claims? And are your publishers prepared to actively enforce copyright and trademark infringement? Um, A lot of this comes into play when countries such as China, which do not have strong copyright laws, will scrape data and information off of other websites and make them freely available in uploads. So that can create problems with people whose publishers don't have a strategy for dealing with that already. How do non-Creative Commons-esque media licenses work in international markets? It's really complicated, and obviously each country will have a different response to that. So if you're looking at specific markets, in my case, I'm working in Italy, and my work will hopefully be translated into Italian. I have to think about Italian copyright laws and what their legislation says about image rights and artist rights and publications when I'm thinking about the English publication so that I can make sure that my English publication will incorporate my ability to publish in Italian. Will your publisher allow your data to be hosted in an open access GitHub repository or something similar, or your university repository? Does it need to be website hosted or linked to your publisher's website? How are you going to deal with your data existing in two different places and probably uploaded at two different times? And how are you going to cite that in your work and make it clear in the physical publication if you have one? These are all, like I said, very tricky questions. So it's best if these are ongoing conversations with publishers. For open access publications, obviously the pro is that they are open access. Everyone can access your data and read it and make use of it, and you'll have more exposure, including source communities who wouldn't necessarily be able to access paid uh, paid content, especially those that require subscription services that are usually geared toward academia. On the negative side, publishers often care less about their open access publications in terms of the timing or the editing put towards it, unless people bring their own funding into to cover the open access fees, because it is an expensive endeavor, can be. Um, Self-publication is not peer-reviewed, which doesn't count toward career progress, including tenure. And lesser-known publishing houses and journals often don't carry the same prestige on the job market, even though they may be willing to put in more effort for the initial publication. And they often don't have the resources to offer the same editing and marketing support. So how much does an open access publication cost? Or how much can it cost, rather? The most expensive publications that we had heard of in discussion in the original workshop that this PowerPoint was presented at specified that it had been $10,000 US dollars for a humanities monograph and around $30,000 for a science-based one. So those prices are obviously prohibitively expensive. The science-based ones are often covered by employers or universities as part of grant funding. But the humanities ones often require applications to separate funding or self-funding. That can be really complicated and make things impossible. So how can you fund it? You can fund through scholarships, which come from the school, government, publishers, field-related organizations, or again, self-funding, which I do not recommend. And when can you fund those things? Some applications for funding require that you be enrolled or employed at a university. So if you are finishing your degree and intend to apply for a grant, you should think about the timing around when your official degree conference will be and how that will conflict with scholarship deadlines, or the ends of your postdocs, for example. There might be limits to the fund usages, so you can pay sometimes publishers' fees, photo rights, and editors, but make sure what you actually want to use the funding for is covered before you commit to accepting funding for open access publication and giving that funding, providing that funding to publishing houses. Is anybody actually making money off the sale of these books? Certainly not the authors, which can make them a bit of a nightmare to get publishers to focus on. But don't be afraid to negotiate also what you should get out of it. And also, if you are able to do things like offer your own translation for reasonable rates to the publishing house, which may save them quite a lot of effort and energy and money, you can offer that as part of a negotiating tactic in terms of compensation. So that's one more thing to consider. Now we'll move on to marketing strategies. Marketing can be one of the hardest things for academics to really get behind. It feels like sometimes scholarship should be for the greatest public benefit and therefore should not require marketing, but that's not, unfortunately, how the world works. So here are some tips and tricks that I used when working in marketing in New York for a number of years. The first is to really perfect your elevator pitch. Take 2 minutes. That's the maximum time you'll probably have with a stranger. to give them the basics of the rundown of what your project is, who you are, what your project aims to get, and what you want out of them. So practice it in the mirror out loud so you're ready to say it on the fly at a conference. You can make a couple of different ones. So you'll have one directed toward major publishing houses and one directed toward people you want to work with in the future. But practice, practice, practice. Get your mouth used to making these words in a row come out so that you're not stumbling over your words when you speak for the first time. Use matte, not shiny business cards when at conferences, if you use conference business cards. Take notes on the back of your business card about what you talk to people about, and then hand them that business card. Then when they go home, they have a reference to exactly who you are, what you talked about, and they remember that you wrote on the card. That's always good for when people are looking at things days or weeks after a conference. Who was that? Why did I talk to them? What did they want? Oh, right. Okay. So you get a much better hit rate of responses, I've found, if you do it that way. Update your CV and cover letter before you go to conferences. Make a master copy of every single job skill, every single little thing that you've learned. And then when you need to make different versions for different applications, you can just remove everything that you don't need instead of trying to invent or remember things that you've done previously. You can do the same with cover letters. Mix and match your paragraphs, tailor each one to each job, and then save all of the relevant sections in a master document. Cut and paste and rearrange and tailor as needed. That way, every single job application isn't taking hours and hours to reinvent the wheel. Demonstrate that you know your publisher and that you know the audience and that you're thinking about how to make your work and your marketing strategy relevant to those two groups. Who is this for? How many people do you intend to reach? What is the education level of the people your work is meant to reach? How are you going to reach them? Have a plan when you talk to people so you sound like you know what you're doing. You are your best advocate. You have the most buy-in for your project, and you need to pitch it to people that way. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Fake it till you make it if you need to. Regarding digital marketing in particular, it's best if you start building your online presence before you need to start marketing and not when it's time to publish. That way, you have an established following who already trusts you and will share your links and your outreach. They know what kind of scholarship you are, they know what kind of things you stand for, what kind of quality of work that you do. If you don't want to build a big online presence, you can do just sort of a word of mouth and through email outreaches. You can email different groups like online newsletters. The EES, for example, has a newsletter that they send out. Different groups of different areas of specialization have newsletters that often include recent publications. So start making a list of those different groups and reach out to them with your pitch about your book that they can include in their newsletter when you're ready. Learn what you can about optimizing um, your language and your keywords and your hashtags for Google searches and for relevant social media groups. Learn to use a combination of broad terminology and specific field-related stuff so that search engines and that people, individuals searching, will be able to pull it up looking both directions. For example, from my perspective, I would use broader hashtags when using my work, such as archaeology and Rome, and maybe Egypt in Rome would be my specific, or Egyptiaca or museology. So you have your broader search terms that will bring people who are looking for interesting topics around these broad search terms. And then you have your niche search terms, which will pull people who are looking for very specific field-related results. You can create a YouTube playlist of any of your lectures or panel discussions that are available online and make sure that you do it using your professional email address. I would create a separate Google account if you're going to create a YouTube outreach so that it doesn't have all of your individual data and maybe also not necessarily your photo linked if you're careful about that. In terms of physical outreach, go to conferencing publishing tables. Talk to the people who are working there. Talk to them about the series that they publish. Talk to them about what they're looking for. Look through the books and see if there are series that are relevant that you could pitch to. Um, Look at your institute library. Who's publishing these related series? And do you know anyone personally who successfully pitched that you can reach out to? Go physically to the library and look on the shelf right next to important books that are relevant to your research. Relevant shelf marks might give you a better indicator of what other publishers you can look at and who else might have published useful things. You can also read this book called The Book Proposal Book by Laura Portwood Stacer. She focuses on developing your book proposal to publishers. There are also materials online that you can work through with her, but I have found her material extremely helpful. You can also access the Women's Classical Caucus YouTube book pitch series. They're all available on YouTube, wonderful resources. And they go through every step of pitching your book and going through postdoc applications. They've got a lot of useful material on there. So watch some of their video resources, and then they also link to some of the things on their website that are follow-up that will help you think through the pitch process in a more specific and grounded way. You can also make marketing plans, written marketing plans. You can find some templates online and fill in things that you think are relevant for that will help with prompts to help you work through who is my audience. If you're not exactly sure about where you want to market, I suggest Googling book proposal templates or project pitch templates and help you think through exactly where you want to be and whom to whom this information will be relevant and useful. As part of your marketing strategy, I would suggest linking all of your digital presences to a single, what's called a linked tree. A linked tree is a single link code that you, or a QR code that you can have people click or scan, and it pulls up a figurative online tree of all of your references. So you could link your LinkedIn page, your academia or your ResearchGate page, your YouTube playlist, your Instagram, links to your GOI codes for your work, all through a single link. So all people would need to do is to scan a QR code or click on a one single link, and it'll take them to all of the options to access all of your online presence, so they can find out who you are in the way that is most useful or relevant to them. So these central landing pages do need to be regularly updated. It's best if you do it every time you give a conference presentation or every time you update your CV. Just take a little look at your linked tree and make sure all the links still work. Make sure it's still all stuff that you want people looking at. So if it's something you gave a talk to 5 years ago and you don't really want people looking at that because your research has really progressed, maybe take that one out. Things like that. So keep it updated as you're updating your CV. Just do it all at the same time so that you're not having to think of it as a separate process. You can use a QR website generator to link anything that you want, including your linked tree or just directly to your academia page or your university biography page, etc. And you can keep that QR code on your phone so that people at conferences or out and about or in your department can just scan it right in front of you and it'll pull it right up on their phone. There are some QR code generators that also allow you to embed an image in the middle of your QR code. So if you're trying to develop the sort of presence where you're linked with a specific image, then I would recommend finding something like CodeMonkey or something like that that will allow you to embed the image, and you won't have to think about how to do it for yourself. And it will always remind people, oh, that's that logo. Oh, that's that person. Um, Put your current work in progress information there on your linked tree or on your academia or whatever ResearchGate, if you feel comfortable doing that, so that people know what you're working on next and they can keep you in mind for future projects or to come in, check back if they want to do things like that. You can use your ORCID references to publications, all of those sorts of things. Basically, you want to make it a central location so that people don't have to do the work to Google you. The easier you are to find, the more people are likely to cite you and to look for your work. This is especially relevant for those of us who are earlier in our careers who don't have those sort of established presence that makes for a really impressive Google or don't have a Wikipedia page, for example. You can use your professional media for marketing as well. So for LinkedIn, you could change your current job role to your book title and your publication date so that everyone will get that sort of announcement blast. So and so has a new job role and they'll see your book title. So that'll reach out to everyone in your network without you having to sort of spam everyone to look like or just hope that people look at your page. In regard to the general and broad hashtags, that applies across social media sites. So obviously it's effective on Instagram, but it's also effective on LinkedIn, and things like that. And try to go on sites where people share things. And that means that your whatever social media you're using to market will need to be open and unlocked and public, which is why I said you might want to do something with a professional email address that doesn't have your full name and university and everything in it. Just make that for social media and use that for everything so people can reach out to you. Because often when you're doing public outreach, you'll get outreach from people who are not involved in academia. So it'll hit people that you're not necessarily having in mind, and maybe they're not interested um, in directly the kinds of things that you would hope for, but they might reach out to you anyway, and they might give you a call if your phone number is linked to your university website. So if you have a sort of private setting, that might be best for online privacy. Um, my final thoughts are regarding accessibility. Can you build in accessibility for your digital images and databases? Alt text for your pictures? Is it colorblind friendly? Can it be read aloud easily? Can it be scrolled without a mouse? Things like that. If you're interested in accessibility, many universities do have departments which help people design that into things or to help people think about how accessibility might become a part of their broader project. Don't be afraid to negotiate. I said it before. I'm sure I'll say it again at some point, but negotiation is easier in terms of book publications than it is in terms of journal articles because many publishers expect that that you're pushing your book to more than one publisher at a time. It's generally standard practice. Double check with your university library and with your specific department head, but generally speaking, you can pub your book to more than one publisher at the same time. And that means that you have a bit of room for negotiation if more than one group is interested in you. Always a plus. Never guaranteed, obviously, but always a plus. It's worth making a pitch package if you think you're going to be reaching out to three or more publishers so that you have something ready to go. And that means a small write-up or including about 15 to 20 pages of writing, depending on the publisher's requirements, and then a small write-up of your intended audience and all of the things we talked about earlier in this. If you can write it, even in bullet points, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is who I intend to reach, this is how I'm going to do that, and this is what um, other considerations I would like to talk about. And you can send that all as part of one attempt, one reach out. Think about how much emphasis you'd like your publisher to put on digital versus print final products, not just in terms of marketing, but in terms of accessibility to the general public, access to data. How long will they be willing to host the data on a website? Will they be willing to work with your university if you post if you host something or GitHub in other formats that don't require publishing houses to host the actual content, but would require linkage in some way, and how would that work legally with them? Do look for publishers with a good track record of digital publications. If you see things that you like, look and see who the editor was. Maybe reach out to them. Try to find people who have already been in practice doing this for a while. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time. And also think about your audiobook rights and recordings. Do you want to make your own audiobook? For example, my family has requested, since they're not big book readers, but big audiobook readers, that I would record chapter one of my thesis with the methodology and the and maybe the conclusions, so they could listen to it. But that might not be permitted by my publisher. Is my publisher going to reserve the right to make their own audiobook? They are completely different rights groups. So when you negotiate one, you don't necessarily negotiate the other. So always keep in mind whether you want to reserve the right to create an audiobook, and if so, how will that work with linking digital databases and online publications? So yeah, these are all, like I said, many, many questions, not so many answers, but here I hope is at least a foundation to get you thinking and to get you started. And you can access this PowerPoint, and the links in it will be helpful, I hope, toward getting some useful information. And if you get stuck, you're always welcome to email me. Um, my email address is very easily findable online. Or if you want to see what I mean about the YouTube playlists, you can find me on YouTube at my usernames are Roman Egyptiaca. So my email address is egyptiaca.romana@gmail.com. Again, my name is Bet Hucks, and I hope this is useful to anyone watching. And good luck out there.